Hello and welcome to another tutorial from More ICT. In this tutorial, we're going to be making a color rain effect using Windows Form and C#. So in this form, I basically just loaded up a background image and nothing else here. So as soon as I click play, it should start the rain effect. As you can see, these little petals are falling down. Then once the first row goes out, it starts to do it in a more natural order. What we're doing here is we are loading up these little petals from a folder directly, saving it as an image, converting it to a class, and then we're displaying it onto the main window, right? And all of these things are being done through Windows Form. So as you can see, we just have a timer here and the background image. Nothing else is implemented into the form. We're going to be creating this one using .NET and C#. So let's go ahead and create a new project. Okay, so in this window, let's click on creating a project. I'm going to choose my Windows Form app. That's the .NET template. Click next. I'm going to name this one Color Rain Effect Windows Form More ICT. And then click next. For the framework, we can choose the .NET 6. That's perfectly fine. Click create. Here is our empty form. So right now what we need to do first is we need to import the images that we need and we set them up. So if you go ahead and download the images from the More ICT website or in the link in the description, you should be able to see something like this. So we have one main image, that's the Mugen background, that's from the anime show called Samurai Champloo. So I found it, I quite like the background of it. I thought it was going to be a nice addition to the tutorial just to showcase how to make something colorful in Windows Form. You can use any images of your own choice. So we're going to use this one as a background. We're going to import that into the form. And then we have these droplets of colors. So we've got 1 PNG, 2 PNG, 3 PNG, 4, 5, and 6. So these ones here, what we're going to do is we're going to copy the entire folder into the debug folder. So that way we can load it directly from the folder when we're running the application. And this one is going to be imported into the form. So to begin, I'm going to copy both of these files. Go to the project, right click on the name of the project here, click on Open File Explorer, and then I'm going to go to bin, debug, net 6 windows, and right inside of this one, I'm going to drop both of these images here. Okay, so while I got that open there, I can go back to the form right here. I can choose to say, just copy address here for now. And when it comes to the background image, click on that for the form, click on the 3 dots, go to project resource, then I'm going to paste the address here. That way I can find the background image that I need. Double click on that. That will now import the background image to the form. As you can see, that's now been imported. Change the image layout to stretch. It's stretched across. There's another option called double buffered. We definitely need that. Double buffered is usually false, so just set that to true. And then we're going to change the title from form 1 to Windows Form More ICT. So it's going to name it to Color Rain Effect in Windows Form More ICT. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to add a timer. So let me drag and drop a timer here. Name this one Ripple Effects Timer. Okay, and set the enable to true. And interval, change that to 20. So we want this to run every 20 millisecond. Right, and then if we go to the events here, I can just type in there Ripple timer event. That way we know what it is. Once you've done it, just press enter and it should add the timer to the C# form. Now if you go back and click on the form, we also need another event, paint. Okay, so say form paint event. So there we have our timer event. So this is going to trigger every time the timer runs, and this is going to trigger every time something is drawn to the form. Okay, so we're going to follow some object-oriented programming style here. So we're going to create a particles class, and then we're going to invoke that class or instantiate that class into the main form later on. Okay, so first, to create the class, I'm going to right click on the main project name here, then go to add, go to class. Okay, and then just choose the first option here, particle or particles, fine. Okay, and then Visual Studio will give you the particles class template. Inside of the particles class template, we need to declare all the variables that we need for the particle, and also we can give you the main constructor for the particle as well. So because we're going to be loading the files externally from a folder, we need to have a location how the information is going to be transported into the class and how it's going to be used. So let's set up our blueprint. So first with the public int height. So this is going to be the height of the particle or the color raindrop. We also need a int width. We're going to need a position x. I'm going to do that one with it with x. Okay, and then we're going to say public int position y. And we also do a public. This one's going to be public int for a size. So we're going to use an array. So we're going to say sizes equals to. So here we can declare like a few different sizes that we want. So I think we have 30, 40, and 50. That worked out quite nicely last time. And then we're also going to need to get the random. So random, lowercase random is equals to new random. We also need a public int for speed. Set that to 0. In I is equals to be 0. So that's just a temporary integer that we're going to be using. Okay, and we also need the last one we're going to need is the image. So to use the image, we need to use the drawing namespace. So we can say using system drawing. So by invoking that one, we should have access to the image class. So we can say public image to particle. So it's going to be a single particle. Let's spell it right. Okay, and lastly, now we can create the constructor. As I said, public particle. So the constructor is usually the same name as the class, right? And inside the constructor, we're going to accept a string. So we're going to say file location like so. So whenever the image or the particle is created, we can quite easily pass in the location of the image that we need. So then it can be used for this one here. Okay, so let's just say particle like so is equals to image from file and then file location. So it's just going to load up that file from the images folder. So let it be from anywhere between 1 and 6 PNGs. Okay, and I is equals to random.next from 0 to sizes dot length. Sizes dot length. Okay, so it's going to pick one of the sizes from here, 30, 40, or 50. And then we're going to set the height to sizes I, and then width to 1. I'm giving you 1 instead of an I. Okay, so height and width will be set to whichever number is picked randomly from there. Okay, and then obviously we have our position X is going to be equals to random next between 0 and actually this one is going to be, so what we want to do is we want the raindrops to spawn or be instantiated far end of the corner, so they gradually move to this side of the screen, so they look like they're falling with a slight wind. Okay, so here we can basically say it needs to just randomly spawn between somewhere -200 to about 800. So it just spawns randomly there, and then we can say position Y random.next between minus 700 and minus 200. So anywhere between that, those two numbers is fine as long as it's above the form. So when you position something at a minus, it's going to be right there at the top. So anything above that, so as long as it looks like it's falling downwards for us. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to need to do the speed. It's a random.next to 1 and 10. So something like that. So whatever the speed is going to be falling down with that speed. Okay, I think that's all we need for the particle class, right? And once we actually do the form, then hopefully everything else will make a bit more sense. Okay, so now let's go to our main form. So this is the main form, and this is the script that's attached to the main form. So it's attached to the form 1 for the windows, right? So at the top here, before the form 1 constructor, we'll make our global variables. So I need a list of string. So this is going to save the files that we are going to load, right? So it's a new list string, and then do the brackets there. We also need another list, but this is going to be for the particles class. So all the particles that we create are going to be saved inside of this one. Call this one part. Keep spelling it wrong. Okay. New list particles, and then save that there. And we also need a random equal to new random class. So just put in new random. Okay, so these are the variables that we need. Let's go ahead and create our own custom function here. So I'm going to say private void load images. So this is the function that's basically going to load all the images from the folder that we put inside of there. Where do you go? There we are. So the folder that we put here is inside the debug folder where the exe is going to be generated. So you should just find the folder called images right next to it. Right. So to do that, what we say is we're going to say is files. So that's the list that we created there. Files equal to directory, like so, get files. Right. So what we want to do is get all the files inside of something, right? So we're going to say inside of the images folder, and the file type that we're interested in is star here somewhere. Oh, that one. Star, then dot png, the comma, dot png. So we want the png files, and then just turn them into a list and save it into the existing list called files. It's as easy as that. Okay, and just to test it out, we can because we don't have any elements in here, I don't want to add something to it, so I'm just going to change the top part there just to see if we get any files from it, right? So we're going to say this dot text is equals to files, because it's a string anyway. So let's see if I just change that to it. So it just should basically say images slash something something, right? And I also need to run this function. So I'm going to say load images here, like so. So let me just run this for now. Let's see if it throws any errors. Nope, no errors. So as you can see here, the title's been changed to images slash 2.png. And then if I change that to say 3 or 4, right? The images, the 5.png. So instead of manually adding all of them to the resources and so on, we basically just calling one line, save it all into the list, and then that rest of it should be usable. Okay, so now let's create the particles that we need for this application. I'm just going to run a for loop and then just say for like 0 okay, files dot not that one. So instead of files dot count, I'm going to change that to say 400. So at the beginning of the loop, we're going to run the loop 400 times and then create 400 new particles, right? So I'm just going to create a particle here. Okay, keep spelling it wrong. Say new underscore particle is equals to new particles, like so. Okay, now remember that our particles accept a string argument, right? So we have to pass in a string argument, and that's where the files will come in. So now we can just randomly select a color from the files list and then pass it in as the location for the image. Okay, I'm just going to say random dot next. Inside of there, I'm going to pick, oh, actually I made a mistake there. We have to do the files like so. Say random dot next. Okay, and inside of this is 0 to files dot count. So however many files we have inside of there, it's just going to generate a random number between that, and whatever number is generated, it will tell the particle to associate that image with the images class that we are created inside of there. Okay, so then that image can be drawn. And also we can add that to the particles list. Okay, so right there, say particles, add new particle. So that way, however many particles that we have there is all inside of this list, and then through that we can draw it, and we can draw it in the paint event, and then we can move it in the timer event. Okay, so that's all we need for the load images function. Okay, so let's do the timer. So inside the timer one, we're going to do a for each loop. So inside the for each loop, we are interested in particles, and then we're going to call this one temp image. So that's just a temporary variable that we need. And then we also need the particles list. Right. So because we're not going to necessarily make any changes to the list. So just to be safe, in case program throws an error, we're just going to do a to list next to it. That way it creates a temporary list for us based on the particles list. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and say temp image dot position y. For position y is going to be plus equals to temp image dot speed. So the way we are able to access this position y and speed is because we've declared them as public in the first place, right? So all of them are public except for the I, right? So if I just go ahead and type in temp image here dot, you'll see that we have access to all of these functions there, but we don't have access to I because I doesn't have a public in front. Unless you explicitly declare it's a public variable, otherwise the program will treat it as a private variable. So that way you can only work with the inside of the class, not outside. This is one of the good things about object-oriented programming, because then you can set different type of permission for different type of variables, whether somebody can access it, some other program can modify it or not. And then we're going to say position x is going to be plus equals to 8. So for all of them, it's going to be 8. So it's just going to have a nice gradual angle to it. Still inside of the loop, you can say if temp image dot position y is greater than this dot client size dot height plus 100. So if it's gone, if the droplet has gone below here somewhere, we want to be able to reposition it there. So we don't need to recreate more because we're creating 400 of them. So we can just reuse them. Okay, and then we can just say temp image dot speed is equals to random dot next between 5 and 15. So we give it a new speed, and we set the temp image dot position y to say -100. So it's on top of the screen, and then give it a random position on the x. So position x is going to be equals to random dot next between say -200 and 600 is fine. Okay, so this is going to be for the main for loop when the timer is running and there are obviously particles in the scene, right? And once we need to come out of the for loop, this part is quite important. We need to say this dot invalidate. So what this line is going to do, not region, what this line is going to do is after every 20 milliseconds, as soon as it ticks, it's going to draw whatever it needs to draw and delete the form, so then it can be drawn again. So that's how the movements are happening on the screen. So it draws every 20 milliseconds. That's why we will get a nice smooth frame rate for all 400 of these particles that are inside of the form effectively. Okay, so the last event to do now is the form paint event. So right here, we're going to create a new graphics class, the canvas. Oh, we need to link the canvas. This is equals to e.graphics. So the e comes from this event here. So the paint events argument e. So what we're saying is that we can just call it, we could have just used that line throughout, but it's a lot easier to call a canvas and it's a lot easier to read that line. After that, we're going to need a for each loop here again. So we'll do it for each. We'll call the particle type, and then we also call this one temp image. The loop that we're going to be interested in is going to be the particles to list. Right, so anything inside the particle list we want to draw onto the form. Okay, and then we say canvas dot draw image. So right from here, now we're going to need to access all the height, width, and the image that we want. So first, the image that we're going to draw is the temp image dot particle. So that is this image that's loaded into the class there. Okay. And then after that, we go on here. And that will say temp image dot position X, then temp image dot position Y, then we say temp image dot width, and temp image dot height. Okay, so that's all we need. So it's just basically going to loop through all the elements that we've added inside of the list, and then access from the list, or access each of the particles and draw it onto the screen. And then the movements are going to be happening inside of the particles timer. So right there, that's all the code that we need for this project. So if I just go ahead and run this one now, hopefully we should be able to see the rain droplets falling. So there we have it. You can also go back and change some of the values to see how the drops are happening. You can change the background image, or you can have no image at all, and that's perfectly fine as well. So right now it's simultaneously animating 400 different particles with different sizes and different files that's been loaded from a folder. Hopefully you guys had fun with this tutorial, and this kind of stuff are not quite normal to do with Windows Form, because Windows Form is designed to do certain apps and stuff like that. But it's quite exciting that we can make some of these stuff that looks really cool and quite fun to work with and learn C# in the process. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.